never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of emotion. Got my statement, and I'm reading it slow so I can understand it fully. Appreciate my standing, go out of this world and right on time. Oh, never in my life have I seen the sky light up like this. I'm far away from Earth and I wanna know if you exist. Mission control, do you read me? Send me my coordinates lately. Mission control, am I drifting? Tie me to someone who will love me, yeah. Wait, I think I'll last a bit longer. Find another reason to breathe this air.
Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. Happy Sunday to everybody out there. Today, here on the channel, I want to talk some college football championship game weekend. If you have any thoughts on it, as always, please feel free to let me know. Of course, it started on Friday night and then all day long. Yesterday, Conference USA was won by Liberty. They defeated New Mexico State by the score of 49-35. The Pac-12 was won by Washington on Friday night, 34-31. Those two teams played in the regular season. And the regular season, Washington beat Oregon 33-30. And Friday night, the Huskies beat Oregon 34-31. So both meetings were decided by a field goal. And the funny part about that game Friday night was, for whatever reason, even though the two teams played in the regular season and Washington won, Oregon was favored going into the game Friday night. And not only were they favored, but I think everybody was picking Oregon. Nobody picked Washington. And that made no sense to me. It's like we've seen these two teams play already this year and Washington won. So I understand some people thinking Oregon is going to win. But how can they play and Washington win, and now the rematch comes around and every single person that's breathing that watches football is picking Oregon? Didn't understand it. If you follow the channel, then you know by now how I feel about Washington. I said back about week 3 or 4 that I thought Washington had a legit shot of winning the national championship. I still feel that way. Nothing has changed my opinion. Now, Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best wide receiver in America. It's not close. If anybody thinks it's somebody besides him, they don't know football. It's Marvin Harrison Jr. It's not debatable. It's not arguable. But Washington has the best wide receiver room in America. Washington has the ability to put up every how many points they need to. If their opponent scores 45, they can score 50. But if their opponent only scores 25, they can score 30. But they have an amazing offense. Mountain West was won by Boise State. They defeat UNLV by the score of 44-20. And that tells you how bad Boise State wants to win. They were playing for the Mountain West Championship, but yet earlier in the week they fired their head coach. So that tells you they don't just expect to win. They expect to win every game big, when you make it to your conference championship game and you still fire your head coach. The Big 12 was dominated by Texas. This game was never close. Of course, this was Texas' final game in the Big 12. They won the game 49-21, but it was 35-14 at halftime, and Texas had almost 500 yards of offense in the first half. They could have put up 90 if they would have wanted to. I think they were making a statement to the college football playoff committee because this game was never in doubt. It was 14-0 Texas about 6 minutes into it, and from that point on, it was all Texas. The MAC was won by Miami of Ohio, 23-14. Now, the MAC, unfortunately, is a conference that nobody watches, so I don't think anybody understands how good these two teams actually are. But going into the game, Miami was 10-2, and Toledo was 11-1. So two really good football teams. Now, Miami of Ohio is a program that people had never heard of until Ben Roethlisberger played there. And when he was there, they were really good. But ever since he left, it seems like about every 5 or 6 years, they have a really, really, really good season. But in between there, they'll win 6 or 7 games. But they've always been a respectable program, and people have always loved their head coach, Chuck Martin. The SEC was won by Alabama by the score of 27-24. Now, Georgia missed a long field goal in this game, but in the first half, it looked like it was going to be all Bama. The second quarter, they looked really, really strong, and then the second half, Georgia looked a lot better. But Bama made just enough plays to win the game. But this is the kind of team that makes you despise Nick Saban, because people have talked all year long about how this is probably the least talented team he's had since he first got to Alabama, but yet here they are winning the conference. And honestly, really, truly, before the season started, I picked them to lose 3 games this year. And if you watch them during the regular season, you can see why I picked them to lose 3 games. They're just not that talented, but Nick Saban knows what he's doing. But if you look at their schedule this year, I don't know if there's one game where they dominated. I mean, they benched Jalen Milroe after the Texas game, I believe, but they barely broke double digits against South Florida. They struggled against Arkansas. I mean, they struggled against Auburn, who was just average. They struggled against A&M. They didn't look good against Ole Miss. They got dominated in the first half against Tennessee. I mean, it's not like Bama had a game this year anywhere on the schedule where you said, you know what, I think Bama today turned the corner, because they struggled in every game every week, but yet they find ways to win. The Sun Belt Conference was won by the Troy Trojans. They defeat the Appalachian State by the score of 49-23. The AAC was won by SMU. They defeat Tulane 26-14. Now, which group of 5 team will get the New Year's 6 bowl game? Because it looked like it was going to be Tulane all year long until this loss yesterday. Now, obviously, Tulane is out. Will SMU get it, or will it go to Liberty, or will it go to somebody else? I guess we'll have to sit back and wait and find out. The Big Ten, of course, was won by Michigan. I don't think anybody in America picked Iowa, because Iowa can't score. And what do you know? They didn't score. Michigan wins 26-0. And the ACC was won by Florida State 16-6. Now, the one conference game that I didn't talk about when I was previewing all these games is the SWAC championship, because honestly, I don't know if anybody watches the SWAC or not, but I do want to mention it. The SWAC was won by Florida A&M. They beat Prairie View 35-14. And of course, the reason why Florida A&M is so good is because they're coached by Willie Simmons, who played quarterback at Clemson in the early 2000s. So if you want to win, you need to play for Clemson. Speaking of that, there's a big rumor going around that tomorrow it'll be made official that former head coach and former Georgia offensive line coach Matt Luke is going to be the new offensive line coach at Clemson. That is supposed to be made official tomorrow. He was at Georgia and he retired because he said he wanted to spend more time with his family. He's been out of it a couple of years now, and when you're in the coaching business, it's in your blood to the day you die. So after a couple of years away, I can understand Matt Luke wanting to come back. And if you want to come back, what better school to go to than Clemson? There's not one. But as far as the college football playoff rankings go, we'll find out later on today, or may know already depending on when you watch this video, who the top 4 teams will be. But it should be Michigan, Washington, Florida State, and Texas. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be those 4, but it should be. Michigan obviously is in. Washington obviously is in. Florida State should be in because since the playoffs started, an undefeated Power 5 conference champion has never been left out. So unless they change that, Florida State is going to be in. That leaves you with 1 spot. Who gets that 4th spot? I don't know. It should be Texas, but something in me tells me that Alabama is going to make the playoffs. I hope I'm wrong. I would love to see a playoff without Georgia, without Ohio State, and without Alabama, because that way we know for sure we're getting a new national champion. We're getting some new blood in there. But since the media loves Nick Saban and Alabama's the media's darling, something in me tells me that Bama gets that 4th spot. If they do, if I'm Texas or any other Power 5 team, I'm telling everybody from now on, our non-conference games, we're going to do like Kentucky does. We're going to schedule Ball State, we're going to schedule Akron, and we're going to schedule Norfolk State. What good is it for us to schedule a top 5 or top 10 Power 5 team and beat them, and they still get a playoff spot over us? Because head-to-head should matter. If it doesn't matter, why play the games? And the selection committee, supposedly, if you look at all the things that are headlined with how they choose their 4 teams, there's supposed to be 4 main things they look at. And those 4 main things they look at is supposed to be conference championship, what did you do against common opponents, strength of schedule, and head-to-head. Now, Alabama and Texas don't play in the same conference, so they really don't have common opponents. So scratch that one, so it leaves you the other 3. Okay, out of the top 8 teams going into conference championship game weekend, Texas had the toughest schedule. So they've got that over Alabama. And head-to-head, Texas got that over Alabama. So if Texas has a harder schedule than Alabama and Texas beats Alabama, but Bama still gets in, there's an issue. There's no reason to ever again schedule a Power 5, top 5, or top 10 team when you could beat them and they could still get in the playoffs over you. It makes no sense. So the top 4 teams should be Michigan, Washington, Florida State, and Texas. And if it's not those 4 teams, then something is wrong. I know a lot of people are up in arms about Florida State losing their quarterback, and they did. But they're still undefeated. They're still a Power 5 conference champion. And not only that, but if you follow college football, you know that back in 2014, Ohio State went into the playoffs with their third string quarterback that most people outside of Columbus, Ohio had never even heard of. And everybody got so up in arms about how is Ohio State making the playoffs with a third string quarterback? They ain't got a shot. And they won the whole doggone thing. Now, I'm not saying Florida State's going to do that. I'm just saying that that kind of thing can happen. Just because you lose your leader doesn't automatically mean you're never going to win again. It can happen. So it kind of puts you in a pickle because it's not right to leave Florida State out just because they lost their quarterback when they still beat Florida without him. They still beat Louisville without him. But at the same time, if you put them in and Florida State goes in there and they play Washington or they play Michigan and they get beat by 20 points, all you're going to hear is, well, I told you I had no business being there. So honestly, really, truly, no matter what they do now, it's going to be wrong. But I just feel like there's never, as of yet, been a year where a Power 5 conference champion went undefeated and got left out, and I just don't think they're going to do it now. So I think Florida State gets in, but I could be wrong. We'll find out later on today, or maybe you already have, depending on when you watch this video. And of course, this is the best time of the year for college football fans because right around the corner, bowl games will be starting, and then for about 2.5 weeks, you pretty much have a bowl game on just about every day, except for most years there's not one on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. Homes for Our Troops is a publicly funded 501c nonprofit organization that builds and donates specially adapted custom homes nationwide for severely injured post 9/11 veterans. Since the 2004 inception, nearly 90 cents of every dollar spent has gone directly to our program services for veterans. Visit at hfotusa.org. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. I was so unpopular in school, they used to call me batteries. I was never included in anything. And that does it for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.